I like working in the shop, but almost more than that, I like organizing my shop. No matter how much I do, the place always seems to become a mess, and I like the challenge of trying to keep it as nice as possible. I was looking for a way to make a really flexible tool storage that also looked kind of cool. Today, we're going to go through how to make this really cheap, easy, flexible, obviously RGB tool wall. I'm going to start by hanging some backing. This is just vanilla 3/8 plywood held to the wall with a couple 1-inch screws. It was cut in half so it would fit in my car. There's no real need to do it like that. Once it's hung, just a quick coat of white paint. Not really for function, just makes it look nicer. The next is the outside frame of the tool wall. This is 3/4 inch mild steel angle iron. I measured it to be slightly smaller than the size of the plywood, just so it fits in a little bit at the edge. And then I'm just putting a 45-degree angle on all of the edges and cutting them off with a cutting wheel on my angle grinder. This makes it so I can weld it into a rectangle, and it should be fairly strong. Now, this is the first welding job I've ever actually done, and I've never really welded before. So I had my friend Josh come over and bring his welder and teach me how to weld. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
I definitely learned a lot and improved over the entire day, but I still have lots to learn. After each weld, and to see how well I did, I just used a drill with a wire brush just to clean it off. It gave me a much better view of how the weld actually turned out, and it did clean it up so that painting later would adhere better. Let's just say that there were a few welds that needed to be redone. Once the outside rectangle was welded, I welded in some mesh in between to actually hang the tools on. Once all 4 corners were tacked down and held into place, I went along and welded the ends of each one. It's more important to weld the top of each piece than it is the bottom, because once it's hanging up on the wall, you're going to have a lot of tension pulling down on these, so you want to make sure that the tops are held in place so the whole mesh doesn't fall out. Not the prettiest welds in the world, but okay for a first try, I think. Now this is some outdoor fencing that I had used around my garden for a while. It is galvanized, which you have to be very, very careful when welding galvanized because it can easily make you sick. So make sure you are in a super, super well ventilated area. Once it was all welded and cooled down, I put a coat of rust spray paint on the inside. You won't see this, but it'll keep the mild steel and the welded galvanized from rusting. After that, a couple coats on the outside to actually make it look nice. Once it was all sprayed, I measured where the studs were in the wall, and then drilled corresponding holes through the frame. In this case, because I'm drilling through steel, having some oil on hand definitely helps. Also, I know I'm going to catch flack about this in the comments, but no, Birkenstocks are not proper shop attire. Once all the holes are drilled, I have some RGB LED strips that I'm going to put around the top and bottom just to add a little extra lighting to it. Use the adhesive strips to stick them to the inside of the frame on the top and bottom. You can do the sides too if you have enough LED strip. Once the strip is in place, you can use some clear silicone caulking to hold it down permanently. You want to make sure to use clear so it doesn't block any of the light if it ends up covering an LED. Obviously, once everything's down, make sure to plug it in and give it a quick test to make sure that nothing got shorted out and everything still works properly. Once the caulking has dried and the LEDs are in place, go and hang it up on your wall. In my case, I'm using 1.5-inch screws. That's more than enough to get through the bracket and the plywood into the stud behind it, so it should hold it fairly well. Again, test your LED strips again once it's up, because there's a chance that maybe a wire or a strip broke when you were screwing or putting it together. Now once it's up, it's time to start making brackets for your tools. In my case, I picked random cylindrical objects from around my shop. So a can of WD-40, a couple different sizes of pipe, and I bought some 19 gauge galvanized wire just at my local store that was on sale. This was pretty stiff wire, but also bendable. It being galvanized too meant that it wouldn't rust in the long term. I'm really happy with how this wall turned out. Super easy to make new holders and hang things up. It actually looks pretty good. It ends up being kind of a focal point in the shop. And it also has more than enough space for all of my current tools and probably the next batch or two of tools that I want to get. Thanks for watching.